Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another quick edit here on Freewheel Photos. Today we're going to take a look at editing a fall photo and using some of the new tools inside of ON1 Photo RAW 2026. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the edit. Here we are inside of ON1 Photo RAW, and the first thing that I want to do is just get rid of this gentleman down here. He's kind of photo bombing. The star of the show is this tree. So I'm going to come over to my left tool wheel, and I'm going to select the retouching tool, or the retouching gathering. And for this one, I think I'm just going to use the perfect eraser. You can use any one of the retouching tools here, but for me, I'm just going to go ahead and use the perfect eraser right here. So I'll go ahead and make my brush size a little bit larger, and I'm just going to paint this gentleman away, and we'll see what ON1 does about that person in there. I think ON1 actually did a really good job with that, and I'll even get rid of this little informational stand that was there at the park as well. All right, so now all that is good to go. Let's go ahead and close out our workspace there for the retouching tools, and let's start working with getting this image ready to go. Now, I've been working on a format of editing, or a process, if you will. Essentially, what I do now is I want to work with the light, then the color, and then I want to stylize or add a little flare to the image. And I don't always need to add flare, so that's why I save that for the end. So the first thing that I want to do is actually come over to my effects tab, and in ON1 Photo RAW 2026, I now have some preset starting points, and I love having this available to me because it helps me stay consistent with my editing workflow. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and turn on the black and white filter, and I'm not going to change anything with it. I just need to turn it on so that way it removes the color from my image. So when I come over to develop and I start working with the base colors, the base tonality, I can see just the light. I'm not worried about colors. I'm not distracted by colors, especially since this is a photo of fall colors. I'm going to start off with tone. You could do Brilliance AI, but I don't want to do Brilliance AI. I want to be in control of my edit. And so this is a little bit more of an old school method, but this is kind of my process of editing photos, and I really enjoy doing it this way. The first thing that I want to do is I want to set a white and a black point in the image. Right now, I don't have much of a white or a black point. I'm holding down the J key, and you can see I don't have any clipping. So that means I have some dynamic range that I can work with. Now, if we look at the levels here, you can see I don't have a whole lot, but I do have some room on the left and right side of the histogram. So holding down the J key, I'm just going to go ahead and pull my blacks all the way down until I get to a point where I'm comfortable. And I don't want to push it too far because I can always come back and work with that later. So I'm clipping just a little bit down in here and over here in these areas. Those aren't places that I think anyone's going to care to see. So I'm not overly concerned about clipping in those places. Now I'm going to hold down the J key. I'm going to come back over to my whites, and I'm going to push this to the right until I start to see red. I'm clipping in the sky, so I definitely want to pull that back. And then there's also, it's probably a little hard to see, but there's some clipping in between the leaves here. So I do want to pull that back, and maybe right around here. I'm okay if it's clipping a little bit. I don't plan to print this, so I'm not overly concerned about like small portions of the image clipping. I think that this looks just about right. And I can also make a specific adjustment for just the sky, and I probably will do that here in a little bit. With that being said, now it's time to start working with the middle grays. This photo is very flat in the context, or in the sense that there's a lot of light on the top of the image and not so much on the bottom. And then there's this little pocket of light down here at the bottom right of the image. So it's kind of layered, but not quite. It's more like 50-50. Lots of light on top, very little light on the bottom. And so I want to kind of shape that a little bit more because this image is going to be about the color, but I also want it to be about the light that's in the photo. So what I'm going to do is work with my shadows by maybe darkening those down just a little bit, and then coming to my highlights and pulling those up. Now, again, I am only doing this to really drive some contrast in the overall image. And then we'll come over here to our midtones, and I typically pull my midtones down because for me that is usually where I want to go. But in this image, I think I'm actually going to pull my midtones up, and then that allows me to pull my shadows down just a little bit more. And I'm now starting to get some of that tonal separation that I really wanted in the overall image. And then I'm going to push the contrast pretty good here, and I like where that is. It's all subjective, personal preference. Holding down the J key, I think I'm still looking pretty good on my overall tonal adjustment. So now we'll jump over to the structure section. And because this is a raw file, I can push the structure a little bit here. And these are also leaves. So I'll just go ahead and push the structure about 27. I think that looks pretty decent overall. So now I think I have my light where I want it to be. And unfortunately, there's not really a good way of being able to see the before and after without showing you the color image. But if we can just ignore the color, and that does take a little bit of training, but if you ignore the color and just look at the image as the brightness to the darkness, and does that look about right? And to me, it still looks a little flat. So what that tells me is I need to use my curve, my tone curve. So I'm going to come over to effects, and then I'm going to open up my tone curve here, and I'm going to do just a basic S curve right now. And I'm sorry, I did that wrong. Just realized that. So let's just go ahead and reset that. We're going to go ahead and turn off the black and white filter. There we go. I was like, that didn't make sense. Hey, look, I'm human. I make mistakes. With that being said, now I can see what this image is looking like collectively with the color, even though I haven't modified the color yet, but it's really bright on top and then really dark on the bottom here. So I may have pushed that a little too far, and that's okay. I can always come back over here to my tone, and then I'll just pull down on my midtones and then maybe open up on the shadows. And I think that is looking a little bit more realistic to where I want that to be. All right. So now the before and the after so far of where we've gotten. Again, we haven't done anything with those orange tones in there with the color. We've only worked with the light, and we're going to continue working with the light because to me, this is just maybe a little too bright, and the bottom portion is maybe just a little too dark. So I'm going to come over here to local, and I'm going to use a radial gradient to work with this section. So by clicking on local under the add adjustment section, I'm going to hit the plus icon for more, come down to gradient, and then I'm going to hit add, and I'm going to change my shape over to edges. Now, for whatever reason, this is just something you have to remember when you want to use a radial gradient in ON1. Edges is going to apply your adjustment to the center of the radial gradient, and center is going to apply your adjustment to the outside of the radial gradient. Why that's like that, I have no idea. But if you think center is the opposite of what you want, then that's probably the best way of looking at it. I'm just going to click on edges, and now I can use a negative exposure just like so. and I can shape this. All right. And I know that I'm moving maybe a little fast. This is definitely one of those things that if you are familiar with using ON1, then this is going to be like second nature for you. All right. So with that selected, I think I'm good there, and I'll pull this up just a little bit, maybe right there. So turn it off, turn it on, and even that's a little harsh. Yeah. Okay. Subtle adjustments go a very, very long way. Now, with that being said, I need to remove this from the sky, and that's where the new masking tools really do help out. So let's see how well this works. We're going to hit the masking option here, come to our masking layers, and then hit the plus icon, hover over sky, and then I want to subtract that from the mask so that way the adjustment is not applying to the sky. So I'll do that, and hopefully we see that cleans up a little bit. It's not the greatest, but it's not the worst, so I can deal with that. All right. If I turn it off, turn it back on, it's just ever so slightly not impacting the sky, but more importantly, it's not impacting the top portion of the sky because we want to manage that separately. So we'll go ahead and leave that adjustment there. We'll hit the plus icon to add a new adjustment. We're going to come to gradient and we're going to hit add. And this time I want to darken the sky. So we're bringing back some of what's in the sky, just like so. And I think I like what we have there. So I'm just going to leave that alone. And now I like where our light is in the image. Maybe we'll work with the shadow area down here as well. Maybe another radial gradient. So we'll go plus to add in a gradient. We'll hit add, change that over to edges again. We'll go lighten, make it a little bit smaller, and rotate this around. And this is all subjective. And we'll just spread that out like so. Okay. That might be a little too much. So let's pull the opacity down and let's turn it off and turn it back on. Okay. I think I like what's happening here. There's a little bit of dimension overall in the image. And now it's time to start working with the color. So the first thing that I like to do with color is work with the color enhancer or color grading tool. It doesn't matter, but I'm going to start with a color enhancer for this particular look. And lucky for us, we have a tool called Fall. And this is a style that's built into ON1. It's been there for many years. So if I click it, you can see it just pops all of those oranges. And I mean, since I already dealt with the light, the color is going to come out just the way that I would expect it to, or the way that I want it to. So I don't have to do a whole lot to get this to go in the direction that I want it to go. Using that preset was super helpful. And I do use the presets or the styles that are built in to ON1 to, you know, kind of get me going a little bit further. But I feel like I can tweak this just a bit more. So we're going to come to the orange channel and let's play with those oranges. Yeah, we can get them maybe a little bit more red. Don't want to go yellow. I want to really separate them from the greens and play with the color palette of orange on green or red on green. So we'll go with the hue of orange leaning more towards red, and then we'll come over to the yellows because again, flowers and leaves and things of that sort have a lot of yellow in it, and we'll push the yellows towards green and maybe not too hard because there are some yellows that are found right here in the middle of the orange patch that I'm trying to focus this image on. And then we'll come to the greens and let's make our greens more green. And maybe brighten them or darken them. Yeah. And let's come to the yellows and maybe darken those a bit. And you can see how that's really changing the dynamic of the photo. So maybe we won't do that because it's really starting to mess with the overall color palette that's on the image. So if I turn this off, turn it back on, you can see how I'm just getting a little bit more orange in there. But here's what's cool about ON1 that you can't do in some other editors, which is I can add another color enhancer. So I'm going to hit add filter and I'm going to come over to my essentials. And you'll notice I have color enhancer with a little heart next to it. I'll just hit color enhancer one more time. I'm going to hit fall again, and that just increases the intensity of what I just applied. And then I'm probably going to push the vibrance as well on this one. And then we're going to try something. I haven't done this relatively recent, but I'm going to come up here to the mask, and we're going to add in a mask layer, and we're going to try color range, and we're going to do subtraction because the filter as it is designed, and this is one of the things that has been a little different and maybe even confusing, is when you apply a filter, it goes over the entire image. And so when you hit mask layers and you come to any of these and you hit add, it doesn't actually add it to the filter or to the image the way that you want. It's adding on top of what is already going over the entire image, which in result, it does nothing. So what you want to do is go with subtract. So you get something that's going to do the opposite of what you want. So if I press the letter O, and you can see right here, it's not selecting the color that we have in here, which we should be able to go refine. There we go. I was in the wrong area. I'm still learning this. I got to go to mask layers. All right, so color range is now selecting the incorrect color. We're going to grab the eyedropper tool, select the color that we want, and then I'm going to come up here to where it says filter color enhancer, and we want to invert the selection. So now it is selecting all of the colors in the image, the oranges at least. Press the letter O, and we can increase or decrease this color range. And you can see how I'm getting the control over this image to really pull those oranges out in the photo. And you know, it probably does it better justice if I go grayscale like so. You can see I am selecting a whole lot more, and it's doing it relatively natural. All right. Now you can refine this in so many ways. If I wanted to, I could subtract a luminosity mask from this, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to pull the color range down, and then we'll turn off this effect and turn it back on. And you can see how that's just helping bring a little bit of punch into the overall photo and really making things look more fall-esque. All right. So that is the double color enhancer technique. I guess that's what I'm going to call it, and we'll go with that. So essentially, here's where we started. Base photo straight out of the camera. And here's where we are so far. Now, I can continue editing with this image. In fact, I feel like the sky is more of a distraction. So let's just darken that sky down a little bit more. We'll add another linear gradient, and we want to go add. We'll go darken rotate this around, and then I'm just going to put it right over the top portion of the sky, just like so, and maybe back off the opacity. And in fact, I'll probably even cool it down so the sky is more blue, like that, and we can pull away some of the saturation just a little bit, and I think that that looks pretty good overall. And so now what we can do, now that we have the sky looking pretty good, and the trees looking pretty decent as well, we will come back to effects, and then what I could do is go with a color grade. I'm not going to do that for this particular image, but I will add some dynamic contrast. Now, this is ridiculous. I would never do that. All right. That just looks over the top, unnecessary. So instead, what we're going to do is mask this in. Now, I want to invert this mask, and then I want to add a brush, because I just want to brush this in. So we're going to go with add, and this should allow us to brush it in. If this doesn't work, then I will fix it. So yeah, I need to go mode, subtract, and now it's actually doing it. I don't know why that is the case. And if you're like, Chris, what did you just do? What I did was I inverted the mask, and then I came over to my brush tool. I hit the 3-line menu. I came down to the bottom, and I selected the mode of subtract. Why it needs to be subtract when I have a negative mask, I'm not sure, but it works. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue on with doing what I'm doing. That's weird. Yeah, just everything's opposite sometimes, and I don't even know if I wanted to paint it directly like that, but the goal here of what I wanted to do was just selectively put the dynamic contrast in the portions of the image that I thought were more interesting. And that's the whole goal here, right? So if I turn this off, turn it on, the whole image doesn't need it. So in fact, it doesn't even need to be that strong. So I'm just going to pull down on the opacity here. And that's probably not even coming through on YouTube. But for me, I can see it, and it is very, very perceivable. All right. Final thing that I would do with this image is add in a vignette. So we'll just go ahead and add a vignette. And of course, it's going to be the big softy, and that's too strong. So we'll just pull down on the opacity here until it looks about right. Yeah, I think that does look about right. And then I should probably throw a glow on here. So we'll add filter, come over here to glow, and I'm going to try the charge more, normal, and then just pull back on that. Maybe pull back on the amount. Yeah, somewhere around there. And then put that underneath the vignette, because I don't need to glow my vignette. That doesn't make sense. So here's the before coming into ON1 Photo RAW, and here's the after with working on it. This may actually be a little too bright in the highlight section now that I've actually applied some more, so I can pull back on my highlights in the entire image. I can even pull down on my midtones and maybe just increase the exposure. Yeah, I could go all over with this, but the point that I really wanted to show with this image is you have so much control inside of ON1 Photo RAW to do things to your images and take them from something like this to something that is a little bit more artistic in the approach. And you just got to play around with the tool and have some fun with it. So hopefully you found some value. If you did, smash the like button. If you want to pick up ON1 Photo RAW and save some money in the process, consider using coupon code FREEWILL10 between now and October 31st. After October 31st, consider using coupon code FREEWILLPHOTOS20. Both of those coupons are affiliate coupons, which means I make a small commission from everyone who uses them, but it's at no extra charge to you. Now, I do recommend, if you are picking up ON1 Photo RAW, you also check your system requirements, and as well as making sure that you meet the minimum and probably better the recommended system requirements that ON1 has for this software. If you want the best experience, you need to make sure that your computer is going to be able to handle the software appropriately. You can download a trial and test it out on your computer as well. I do recommend that as well. Now, if you want to learn how to use the software and get one-on-one coaching, consider signing up for a training call with me. A link for that can be found in the description box below. Until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.